All right. For the first time since taking office in January, this is the right story here. Donald Trump is headed to the Supreme Court. He's asking for permission to fire the head of a federal agency that protects whistleblowers. Here's the person at the center of that case. That is Hampton Dellinger on your screen right now. President Joe Biden chose him to lead the Office of Special Counsel. This was back in 2023. He was confirmed by the Senate for a 5-year term in February of last year. But then earlier this month, on February 7th, the Trump administration fired him. Dellinger filed his response earlier today, and now justices are considering if they will step in and grant Trump's request to lift a lower court's order that blocked Dellinger's firing. CBS News chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford is here now to break down what we need to know. Jan, thank you for being here with us. We appreciate it. Dellinger argues that the law says he can only be dismissed for problems related to performance of his job. The email calling for his dismissal didn't cite that as a reason for why he was fired. So what is your response to that?
Well, I mean, Dellinger's right about that. I mean, the law is pretty clear. It says that someone in his position can only be removed for things like, and I wrote this down, inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance in office. So those pretty bad things, and there's no suggestion here that he's done any of those things. But Trump is arguing, and his argument is that law itself, which Congress passed in 1989 as part of the Whistleblower Protection Act, is unconstitutional, and that it raises important separation of powers concerns because the Constitution gives presidents, he argues, broad powers to remove heads of agencies. And why is that important? Well, because they execute executive power along with the president, and people have to know if the president's doing a good job and his subordinates are doing a good job, so they know how to hold him accountable. So he's making those kind of core separation of powers concerns about a law that is pretty clear that Congress said, no, you cannot do that.
But in the meantime, where does Dellinger's job stand now as we wait for the Supreme Court to make a decision?
Well, so far he's won at every turn. You know, he gets fired on a Friday night and he comes in on Monday morning and he sues. And a federal judge immediately entered a brief stay and then made it a little longer of a temporary order, as you had said, blocking Trump from firing him. And so that's going to be in place now till at least February 26, this temporary restraining order, when I think this judge, based on the arguments that she's heard and what he's been saying so far, will make it a more permanent kind of injunction. So he's still in office. He still has access to the office, and that blocks President Trump's replacement, who would have been the acting special counsel.
And if we look at the big picture here, what will a decision like this from the Supreme Court, what will that mean for all of those other people who are hired at independent agencies?
Well, I mean, that's a really good question. And, you know, this case is the first out of, like, how many lawsuits do we have right now that are working their ways through the courts? I mean, there's like, you know, is there 100 of them? I mean, we're getting close, I think. Yeah, and so this is the first one to kind of reach through, go through the appeals process a little bit anyway, and get to the Supreme Court. But I think this one's really an outlier that's not going to really tell us much of anything, and there's two reasons for that. Number one, if the court decides it's going to side with Dellinger here in this case, that could be really temporary because there's kind of some significant jurisdictional and procedural issues here. These kind of temporary orders, they're usually not appealable. So if he wins and the court says, no, we're staying out of it for now, that could just be pretty temporary, and then they'll kind of get back when it's back to them on a more permanent basis. But if he loses and the court kind of rules with Trump on this, and they say, we're going to step in and we're going to lift this order and you guys can continue to have your litigation, but in the meantime, we're going to lift that lower court order and Trump's guy can come in. If that happens, I think it doesn't really tell us a lot either, because this is probably one of the stronger cases that the Trump legal team has. I mean, I think the law, there's existing Supreme Court cases that suggest that the president has the authority to fire these kind of single heads of agencies. There are other cases that raise more difficult questions with different configured agencies. So I think that is it could be one of these cases that could be important for Mr. Dellinger, and Trump, of course, always likes to get a win. But for the bigger picture, it may not tell us all that much. And there's going to be a lot coming. So, you know.
Oh, I'm sure. Yes, there is. A lot more to watch out for as well. CBS News Chief Legal Correspondent Jan Crawford, thank you so much for your time today.